Well, hello everyone, and welcome on board a blisteringly hot sunset safari here on Djuma and Arathusa private game reserves. To tell you exactly how warm it is, it's about 39 degrees Celsius, which is about 102 degrees Fahrenheit. So one of the hottest days we've had so far this summer. And sadly, these elephants just left the Djuma waterhole. Some of you may have been watching them there. It runs 24 hours a day, and they've been there for about the last half an hour. 30 seconds before we went live, they decided to go and retreat into the shade, which I don't blame them, because it is incredibly hot in the sun, and we're doing the same thing. We're sitting in the shade, and by a we, it's VM on camera. And for those of you who haven't met me, my name is Scott, and you're going to be getting to meet James in another vehicle later, as well as Brent, who's going to be conducting a bush walk this afternoon. So exciting prospects for the adventure, and we look forward to showing you some interesting things. I'm going to continue on now, and as we try and get you a closer look at these elephants in the shade ahead of us, there's a few important things I need to let you know. Firstly, that there's a few other vital members of this team who are not out in the bush this afternoon. They're in the final control room, and that's Nikki, Tara, Kirsty and Jess, and they're all help directing the show with all the different feeds that we can cut to and from. And being a live safari, there are quite a few complications that run with it. So they're in the control room making sure everything gets to you guys in a semi-decent order. And they'll also be helping to send through your questions, which are very easy to send via the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or you can send an email through to questions@WildEarthTV. And we really love hearing from you. If it's your first time watching, please let us know where you are, what the time zone is there, what the weather's doing. I'm sure a lot of you are sitting in very cold climates, possibly in the middle of the night. That is not the case out here. Also, a big thank you to Morning Glory, who sent through an update saying that these elephants were at the Djuma waterhole, as well as to Ellen Fowler, who sent us a report saying that Kunyuma, a 3-year-old male leopard, or roughly 3 years old, was seen on Nkoro yesterday, which is to the south and east of us, and it's a leopard that we used to see a lot as he was growing up, but for about the last 6 months we haven't seen too much of him. And another wonderful update that we've heard is that the Nkahuma Pride have reunited. All 6 of the remaining members of that pride, including Junior, and they are also on Nkoro. And I know Laura was wanting to know if Junior is around, and he certainly is, Laura, so there's some good news there for all of us, and hopefully it won't take too long before the Nkahuma Pride return to Djuma. They're not far away, and who knows, possibly tomorrow morning they'll be here waiting for us to track them down. Let's take a closer look at these ellies. Doesn't look like they're going to go anywhere, but we may get to see some interesting sleepy actions, which we don't often get to see. Well, it's quite strange that they were standing in the blistering sun around that little mud wallow. Look at how it's got its trunk jammed in between its tusk there. Oh, sorry, the other one to the right that you're on, but it's undone it now. All good, I'm sure a lot of people got to see it, but the one on the left that VM did pan across to was also draping its trunk quite interestingly over its tusk. Oh, there we go. Jammed it back in. As I was saying though, we're not too sure why they were in the middle of that open area. They weren't getting too much mud from that little dried up wallow, which is filled with catfish. But Susie pointed out an interesting remark, and she said maybe they were being entertained and enthused by the catfish that were flopping around in front of them. To be honest, Susie, I couldn't see any catfish flipping around, and moving in front of them, but maybe you could from the Djuma waterhole cam. I'm not sure if you did see them, but I couldn't see any sign or movements of the catfish. Maybe we'll pop down there a little bit later and see if there is any further sign of them. They'll still be there, but they may have tried to squirm their way deeper into the mud, where they'll have a very small breathing hole that allows them to still breathe, but by being deeper down in the mud there's less chance of them drying out, which means they'll be able to lie there dormant until the next rains. So a highly evolved animal, this catfish, and it can survive very dry periods as long as it gets low enough down where it will excrete a layer of mucus, creating kind of a capsule around it. And I guess that's what it may have done. How awesome is the way they're playing with their trunks. Now I can't explain why it would be doing that. Possibly it's easier than holding it up or dangling it on the ground. There's a little baby squeezed in amongst all those adults you can see from time to time. There we go. And it won't be surprising to see if any of the youngsters actually lie down flat on their sides. There's another small one there below the cow with the quite big tusks in the center of the frame now. Well, good afternoon to Pamela, who's just sent through a question on Twitter. She's interested to know about a young, tiny little elephant calf. I'm not sure how old it is exactly, well, none of us are, but it's exceptionally small, possibly only a few weeks old or a month or so old. And it was looking really weak one hot afternoon a few days ago. I think Brent was the one who found it when it was in this weak state. But the very next day or following day, 2 days later, James found the same herd, and that same calf was still a bit wobbly, but not looking nearly as in a bad state as it was. So it looks to be on the mend, which is good news. And like I suggested a few days ago, maybe it was just the intense heat that caused it to show a little bit of weakness and signs of ill health, but it seems to be on the mend. Something very important to remember, I know a lot of you may be hugely concerned about that young elephant's life and whether it's our role or responsibility to intervene and rescue that animal. And I heard that somebody even mentioned to a wildlife rescue unit that they should come and save this elephant. But we must remember that by saving that little elephant, which there are more than enough of in South Africa, we would be stealing a meal from another animal. A very hungry hyena who's got little cubs to feed, or a lion, maybe the Nkuhuma pride if they were all split up. So it's something very important to remember when wanting to intervene with wild animals. It's best not to, especially in a wild ecosystem like we are in here, where animals have got free rein to move. And it's Mother Nature's plans that only the fittest survive. And that youngster may have been an example of a weak one that wasn't really supposed to make it and was supposed to fall in to another animal's luck or livelihood. And that is for the carnivores to get an easy meal from time to time. So something important to remember, the only time we will intervene are with endangered animals or animals that are harmed or inflicted pain from humans or some kind of man-made injury. So that's something important to remember, especially to the newer viewers. It's not our job to intervene. Our job here is to be a spectator. Well, at least that's the position we all take here on Safari Live. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, of course, but I feel very strongly that the biggest impact us as humans have is that we try and get in the way too much. What has VM seen? Ah! Well spotted, VM. Looks like we've got another Ellie on the way. From here it looks like it could be a young bull, but I'm not too sure. It's not an easy angle to tell from. I remember a wonderful sighting seeing Quarantine, the male leopard who is brother of Djuma, sleeping in the marula tree just above this elephant, just in this left-hand fork over here. And that was last summer. So happy memories. We haven't seen a leopard on Djuma for quite some time now. Not to say they're not here, but they're avoiding us or managing to dodge us. I don't think they actively avoid us. Let's see what happens here. It is a young bull, and the ladies may give him a bit of a hard time. Let's watch what happens here. Now, young bulls can be quite troublesome, although maybe this is a member of this herd who is in the process of kind of slowly drifting away from the herd. Looks like he's quite gently greeting some of the members of it. So a peaceful encounter, but sometimes when young bulls will approach breeding herds with lots of ladies, possibly ladies in season, they will get chased away because of their boisterous behavior. Now, interestingly, Patsy's come up with a very, very good theory here as to why these elephants are wedging their trunks between their tusks. And well done, Patsy, because I think you're spot on. They take their trunk out of their mouth every now, out of their kind of the wedge in their tusk every now and then place it in their mouth, salivating on it, thus allowing the evaporation off their trunk when they jam it back in between their tusks to cool them down. So a very, very good theory. They don't sweat like we do, but this is simulating sweat to a degree because of that evaporation that'll be coming off the thinner skin around their trunk. So well done, Patsy. I think that's exactly what's going on. And this young bull's already showing some of the boisterous behavior. Oh, that was naughty. We saw that boy. He tested one of the older females between the legs there. Let's see what this female's coming to do here, though. I'm sure it's nothing to worry about, but we do have one lady coming up to say hello to us. Oh, isn't this awesome? And it's calves following. She's completely relaxed with us, feeding away, and probably just wanting the shade that we are also parked in here. She would rather come and sit with us in the shade than be next to this young bull who already appears to be causing a little bit of trouble. Here we can actually see her chewing on the end of her trunk. Look at all the moisture dripping off of it. And let's see if she doesn't jam it in between her tusks again. Oh, wonderful stuff. Oh, the youngster's moved around to the back. It was holding its trunk up into the air, smelling our scents. It's got a very distinctive tear in its right ear, this young calf. Quite a good feature to be able to watch it grow up. It does stay in this general area, but they are not territorial animals. and they can move hundreds of miles away from us here. Well, good afternoon, Remy in San Diego. VM's just spotted a cute moment here that he's swiveled you around to. Look at how great this is. Well spotted there, VM. And sorry, Remy, just had to acknowledge VM's spotting and camera work there. Remy would like to know how old I thought that young elephant calf was that Brent spent some time with the other day. I also got a brief glimpse of it a few days before he saw it, and I would say in and around a month of age, possibly slightly younger than a month or possibly slightly older, but it's very, very difficult to age elephants. I've only seen one elephant calving, well, kind of, and I arrived at a waterhole and saw about 6 to 8 females all facing head to head, and they were caressing something. I mean, we couldn't see because there was a wall of elephants all head to head around one another, facing inwards. And eventually when I got a bit closer, I saw that they were all holding up a very newborn elephant calf with their trunks, testing it, getting to know it, coming to see it. And it was a new member of the herd that had just been born. We could see the afterbirth still dangling from the mother. And sorry, I just got sidetracked by these ellies here. And that was the only time I've seen a very newborn elephant where I can conclusively say it had just been born. Other than that, it's so difficult for us to gauge animals' ages because so few of us, even after spending many years in the bush, get to see animals getting born and then importantly be able to monitor their growth, because they often move off. The areas are too big to follow them in. So this is where kind of maybe zookeepers and people that get to very, very closely watch an animal grow up and get to see several births of the same species over any given period of time, they could probably give us better ideas or guesses as to age. But I often just relate back to humans. You could line up 10 humans in a row and you probably would get a lot of their ages wrong, and they're our own species. So my guess of a month is completely a guess, and I could very well be wrong. It'll be interesting to hear what Brent and James think about the age of that young elephant. And the good news is you will be able to ask Brent right now how old he thinks that calf is, because you're about to join him on a bushwalk. Don't be scared. He has got a big surprise waiting for you, and I wish I was coming along for the adventure.
Good afternoon everyone, and welcome on the Sunset Bushwalk Safari. We started walking the same area we were walking this morning around Buffelshoek Waterhole, and being a hot day, I was hoping there'd be some elephants or some buffalo here, and there are. And again, we've had such good luck with elephants today. This morning in the perfect spot. Again now, if we check the wind, straight back towards us. They can't smell us. They're really enjoying themselves. I'm really enjoying sitting here. I've got Jandre, who's on camera with me today, and we're just in a picture perfect spot at the right time of the day, at the right place. And you can see the elephants completely unaware that I'm sitting here watching them, drinking, splashing mud on themselves. The wind's quite strong, so they probably can't even hear my voice too well at the moment. So, and you can even see the little babies having a good rub up against the bank there. He's got an itchy bottom. We're really safe where we're sitting at the moment. We've got a nice big body of water in front of us. We're still up on a high ground. The wind is absolutely perfect, and the eddies have no clue we're here at the moment. You always have to consider very carefully when you approach waterholes, especially at this time of the year with the lack of water around, and at this time of the day when it's hot, when you're pretty sure elephants are going to be around. And you can see they've finished their drink and they look like they're heading back up into the bush now. So the wind nice and strong from this side, we were always going to approach from downwind, and even then listening very carefully as we approach to make sure we don't surprise a herd that could have been here already. We just got very lucky this time that they actually came from the opposite bank and the wind, so we didn't have to do any funny positioning. We got to sit down here and enjoy the ellies as they came down, and we can see now they've finished their drink, and now they're going to go spread out into that woodland and start feeding. And I thought I saw something just beyond those ellies there a second ago. Just have a quick look. Okay, Jandre, you see that elephant right on the left? If we go to the left of that, there's a dark object. There's also a buffalo bull just behind those elephants. Hopefully he'll walk out into the open a little bit later. Oh, look at those guys over there, having a big rub up against the fallen stump there. So what quite often happens, they'll go spray some mud to try and help with some of the ticks and whatnot, and after that find a nice rubbing post and try to remove some of the ticks. And we'll wait a little bit, and here you can see dust bathing afterwards as well. There's nice soft sand there. You can just see them throwing the dust on. So there we go, there's two buffalo bulls who've just walked out as well. And again, those can sometimes be one of the more challenging animals on foot, but we're in a perfect position, nice and safe. No chance of them surprising us. Wind in our favor, nice big patch of water between us. Wasn't that great? And it looks like the ellies are going to move along. So we'll just go, probably wait around for a little bit longer, just to wait till they get a little bit further. And then I think what we'll do is we will go and show you those rubbing posts and stuff that the elephants have used after they've gone and utilized the water hole. But until then, we're going to stand by here and watch them move off into the distance. I'm just going to move around to the other side of the water hole, and in the meantime we're going to cross back across to the vehicles to see what they've been up to.
Welcome back, everyone, and I have no doubt you really enjoyed your interaction with Brent. What if this herd picked up on? Why have all of a sudden they started moving with so much purpose? This is really, really interesting stuff, and they can communicate infrasonically through audio waves that we cannot hear. I can assure you that must have picked up some kind of a message through the earth, through these infrasonic frequencies, because with no warning at all, they all of a sudden got up and started moving. So I think we will be able to loop ahead of them just one last time. We'll get you one last view of them. So hold on, let's try to race you back for one last view, because they are heading into some thick vegetation. Okay, almost there. There we go. Certainly moving with a lot of purpose. And I'm glad you came back when you did, because there wouldn't have been much time to see this whole herd on the move. Wow, wonderful, wonderful start to the afternoon, filled with elephants. I mentioned earlier that they're not territorial, so we're incredibly lucky to have so many of them around on Djuma and Arathusa over the last week or two, and let's hope they stick around for a bit longer. But there is nothing stopping them moving hundreds of miles into the north of Kruger, and not even into the north of Kruger, but into two different countries, either into Zimbabwe or Mozambique, two of our northern bordering countries. Now, fear not, I saw another animal just a few seconds ago as I was reversing. And I don't know if I've stopped in the best spot there. Well, you can see both of them. VM's just leveling off the camera. And now taking in for a closer inspection of what looked to be two big bull giraffes, although yeah, it looks like two bulls, although the one in front could be a female. She just seems to have quite large ossicones, those horn-like structures. Or are they both females? I think I've actually miscalled this completely. And I think we are looking at two female giraffes, so apologies for that. Although the one on the far right does have quite strange ossicones, because they usually end in quite a flattened tip. But she's got quite a unique hairstyle, you could say. Bit of an afro. But let's try and get you a little bit closer. We are not in the best spot here. What I'm going to do is, rather than trying to get closer to those two, I'm going to see if we can get you closer to one that's actually on the road, just off the road up ahead. I'm not used to driving in this vehicle, and they all have their own little intricacies. And my earpiece pulled out there. Thanks, man. But I should be back in contact now with everyone. I'm just going to creep forward a little bit more. No, maybe I'm not. Maybe I want to stay here. Stay here. And it's the third female giraffe. About 4 oxpeckers on her neck and a few more birds coming to land. But she didn't seem too interested in sticking around for a close-up view. But fear not, we'll try and loop ahead of her. And while we do so, we are going to send you across to James, who might have a slightly better view of the same animals. If it's the first time you're meeting him, enjoy. He's a character, and we'll see you all a little bit later.
Hello everybody, welcome to Wendy and Arathusa. Of course, we are here on the far western sector of our traversing area, so if you do lose the picture, we are sorry, but we don't think you will. A late introduction, I suppose, for Brian and I. That is not Brian in the picture, that is in fact a giraffe. Brian is the same size as that giraffe, and so they can be easily confused. Brian is in fact operating the camera that is filming that giraffe, and now me. My name is James Hendry, and as Scott told you, I'm sure, about half an hour ago, you are on a live safari here in the magnificence of the Kruger National Park. Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, actually, to be more accurate. 3.5 million hectares of magnificent African wilderness wonderland. That's a lot of alliteration for this time of the day. In fact, for any time of the day. And we do love to hear from you. Please remember that. Hashtag Safari Live if you're on the tweet, or questions at WildEarthTV if you want to email us. anything you'd like to ask, well, within reason, of course, normally about the wildlife that we're seeing, but if it's a particularly quiet drive, well, ask us what you like and we'll see if we want to answer it. Giraffe over there, obviously, and we've done a big circle around here hoping to find tracks of Shadow. What I can tell you, well, for those of you who don't know, quickly, Shadow is a 9-year-old female leopard who's recently lost her, basically her 7th attempt at raising a child. This time nowhere was it her fault at all. Young Sindile has gone off to a centre to be monitored for rabies infection, and we have come looking for her. We haven't seen her for the last little while, and I do know that she was seen in this particular area about 2 days ago. So we're hoping to see if we can pick up some tracks. If we can't, well, then we'll just enjoy the magnificence of animals like this giraffe over here. A bull in his prime, he looks to me, and he was recently being assailed by a number of red-billed oxpeckers who had found a source of ticks on his median horn. And the median horn, of course, is that piece of calcified skull in between his 2 real horns, the 2 obvious horns there. You can see it there quite nicely. And the oxpeckers, unfortunately, have since flown off, absconded, searching for better things. Oh, you can see one. Brian is indicating that there he is, sitting on the back end of his skull now, on the axis-axle joint, which also tends to be very pronounced in giraffe. Now, the reason for that, before I continue with telling you my plan for the afternoon, it's quite interesting. And giraffe is able to bend its head. I've forgotten this, actually. I've just remembered it. Bend its head upwards at that joint will sort of bend to about 180 degrees. Now, if you're sitting in front of your screen, I'd like you to do something, please. Will you turn your head back as far as it will go until it goes and then stop, obviously. I don't want you to do an injury to yourself. And you will notice that your axis-axle joint, which is the joint, basically the first vertebral joint, will probably only bend about 90 degrees. And in a giraffe, that is different, because obviously the further that joint will bend, the greater the reach that the giraffe will have when it is seeking out tasty morsels in the trees around the place. Right, so our plan is to head further, just sort of around this block, see if we can't pick up any tracks. We'll pop past the Arathusa Dam and see if there's anything coming down to drink there. We have passed a herd of elephants. In fact, we've passed 2 herds of elephants while you were watching Elephants with Scott. So the elephants are definitely in abundance at the moment, seeking out water and reveling in the new green vegetation that they have to eat. Now, this is, of course, the second giraffe today that we've seen standing absolutely dead still, looking seemingly curiously about the place. But we can't see what they're looking at the moment. This one is looking quite intently down into the drainage line. So what I'm going to do is just sneak forward, see if we can't spot what he's looking at. With any luck, a leopard devouring something in a tree. Brian? Right, so the giraffe was looking basically down here. Now the thing with the giraffe, of course, is that it does not alarm call. Well, not normally. I have heard them make sort of puffing sounds sometimes, but not very often. Normally they just stare blankly like this, and then you have to guess what they're looking at. Unlike an impala, which makes a very loud, alarming sound. So we're just going to look down into this drainage line quickly. I will retrieve my powerful binoculars and see what we can see. I don't see anything at the moment. Unfortunately, no golden pelage covered in a smattering of black spots. No, alas and alack. Giraffe also apparently can communicate infrasonically, a bit like an elephant. Probably not quite as well as an elephant can, or as variedly. I don't think that's a word, Brian. With as much variation as an elephant can. But they do have the ability, apparently, to communicate in some kind of infrasonic manner. The giraffe is still staring down into the drainage line. I'm going to reverse again. He's probably just playing us cool. We'll reverse it back a little bit, and then I think we'll carry on our merry way and see if we can't pick up some tracks. It would be very pleasant, I must say, to see a leopard. I haven't seen one since my return from the United Kingdom. I didn't see one in the United Kingdom either. A bit shorter than there. Let's just have a listen and see if something else isn't perhaps alarm calling, like a squirrel or a bird. And again, for our new viewers, I use the term alarm call quite a lot, and I think we all do, and perhaps it's a little confusing to you. When a lot of animals see a predator, and when birds see predators, they often make an alarm calling sound. Squirrels will sort of chatter excitedly. Batises, which are small birds, will go and sit above and shout very loudly. Rattling cisticolas do the same, and then in the impala make a loud snort. Kudu and nyala and bushbuck make very loud barking noises. They sound almost like dogs. Baboons do the same sort of thing, and monkeys make a very distinctive sound. None of those things are happening now. The sound that you can hear, other than me droning on, is a white-browed scrub robin singing very beautifully in the drainage line. Okay, on we go. We've exhausted what this particular little spot has to offer us. Let's see what else we can find. Hello, Mr. Giraffe. He's looking quite intently at the drainage line, I must say. He's still looking there. We might pop back into this area. Brian, is that reptile moving? It is, you know. Can you see it? There's a huge leopard tortoise over there. I'm seriously tempted to drive off-road for it. There's a very large leopard tortoise moving, of course, at great speed, as tortoises are wont to do. We're actually going to go off-road there and have a look and see, because I think it's a very special thing to see, a leopard tortoise that size. They get that big in the Eastern Cape regularly, but not really here. So I shall just gently drive off-road. The giraffe is going to come into picture as well. We won't get too close to him in case we give him a fright and make him run away. I mean the tortoise. There's the giraffe and the tortoise in the same frame. The tortoise is now highly mobile in a northerly direction. Look at him go. Isn't he lovely? That is a really big leopard tortoise for this area. And of course, I could go and pick him up. He would just disappear into his shell. But I'm not going to do that, because what they do is they tend to empty their cloacas, so they void their bowels basically onto whatever picks them up. And in times like this, when water is quite hard to come by, and you can see that moving is not very easy for a tortoise, it tends to be a little bit cruel, because for them to then replace that water is quite difficult. That's a really nice shot. Leopard, tortoise and giraffe in the same shot. I'm not sure that. I think that might be a Wild Earth first. Don't you think, Brian?
I do.
A world premiere.
Spectacular.
Isn't it wonderful? Especially as the tortoise was moving at such a speed. And you can see I would never have seen him if he hadn't been in the open, crossing between two bushes or thickets. And we're going to sit here, and as that tortoise disappears, we're going to slowly reverse out of here. And while we do that, a quick answer to Remay, who's asked a very good question about how good is a giraffe's sense of smell. Remay, I would say much better than ours. I think all the animals out here smell really well. It's a crucial form of defense, especially when the bush is this thick. And I suspect, I have never read this, but I suspect that it's probably some kind of an evolutionary arms race where predators probably become less and less distinctively smelly. And I think that's half the reason that they're so fastidious about cleaning themselves, except for the hyenas, of course. And so the sense of smell must develop on the prey species, otherwise they'll be outcompeted. So I think you'll find that their smell is extremely sharp. They also, of course, use it for communication hugely. A giraffe will definitely use their sense of smell to test whether there is some kind of a receptive female in the area. And you've all seen, I'm sure a lot of you would have seen, the Flehmen behavior demonstrated by lions and zebra, where they lift the top lip to understand the mating status of various females, and that's, of course, to do entirely with the olfactory senses of the nose. Right. That tortoise is hidden from us. They're wily things, those tortoises. You've got to be quite careful of them. We head out now onto the road. Normally a leopard tortoise in this area, gets to about that size, I'd say. But that's a very big leopard tortoise. In the Eastern Cape, they get huge. In the Eastern Cape, they'll get up to that big. Not really sure why they get there and not here. Marvelous, that. Getting some kind of communication from the final control. And then a very excellent question about the age of that tortoise from Donna on Twitter. I think I would probably say that tortoise is between 12 and 15 years old. I'm not really particularly good on their ages, but that one is very big for this area. They can live up to 100 years. They obviously keep growing their whole lives, but they do start growing more slowly as they get older. Given the size of that and given the number of predators that there are around here, I would say probably about maybe up to 20 years old. So I'm giving you an extremely wide-ranging answer, but I'd say 12 to 15, maybe up to 20 years. Not really being very committal about that, but that's as close as I'm prepared to go, I'm afraid. I think they also grow at different rates in different areas, so it's quite difficult to say. One of two tortoise species that we get here. The other one is called the Speke's hinged tortoise. Now, that means that there's a hinge on the tortoise, obviously, and what the hinge does, it's at the back of the carapace. You have two pieces to the shell. You've got the carapace on top and the plastron underneath, and the carapace on the Speke's hinged tortoise, which is a much flatter tortoise and doesn't get anything like that big, is slightly hinged at the back so that it can kind of close up. When it's tucked its legs inside, it will close up slightly, and that makes it even more difficult for potential predators to get in there and attack its soft, fleshy bits. Sit first. Gail in Rhode Island, lovely. You've sent through a question which I'm afraid I have failed to hear, but I'm hoping it will come through again. So be patient. There's a wonderful picture of a little squirrel, a little tree squirrel, being very confiding. Normally they just run away. Isn't that lovely? It's the only squirrel species we get in this area, a tree squirrel. That's really nice to see. And that's what seemed to be a female squirrel. Now, the only way you can tell that, of course, is from what's behind their tails. And at this time of the year, the males have got an extremely obvious scrotum. Yeah, I'd say that's a little female. Very wily and very aware. It's actually very unusual to find them this confiding. They normally would run off. And she'll be looking for insects. She's a rodent, of course, so a squirrel is a rodent, and they, much like many rodents, will eat pretty much anything they can. Seeds, insects, probably a little bit of carrion maybe if they can find it. You don't find huge swathes of them in the buffalo carcasses, though. They tend to avoid that. And obviously nuts and fruits if they're around. One of the favourites is a marula fruit, or a marula nut, which is very difficult to get out of its casing unless you have little sharp teeth, like a rodent like that does. It's so sweet. Cool. That's the best squirrel sighting I've had here for a long time. Well, not that I've been here a very long time. Right, we're now approaching the dam at Arathusa, where I'm hoping my radio communications with the final control will improve. And Gail in Rhode Island, I will answer your question as soon as I can hear it. Right, Gail, you want to know what does the leopard tortoise eat? Gail, the leopard tortoise is a vegetarian, and they eat mainly vegetables when they can find them. So fresh grass they love. They eat fresh shoots. They'll probably eat rhizomes from grasses if they can get them. That's the roots. But they're strictly vegetarian. I suspect they probably eat the odd seed. They may, I suppose, eat perhaps some termites if they can, but what's interesting is the Speke's hinge tortoise tends to be a little bit more omnivorous, as far as I remember, and they will apparently eat giant land snails, lest I'm much mistaken, so they have slightly francophone tastes, do the Speke's hinge tortoise. Nothing going on at the Arathusa waterhole. There is a waterbuck there, but it's standing underneath the guest deck, so I'm not going to put the camera on it, I'm afraid. It is a beautiful, beautiful afternoon. Pretty hot today, but not too hot. Apparently a lot hotter 2 days ago. And tomorrow we are heading for apparently 44 degrees Celsius, which is about 7 million Fahrenheit. And then the question not so much about what the tortoise eats, but eating it. Now, does it have much meat on it? Ramey, you'd like to know. Ramey, a tortoise doesn't have a huge amount of meat on it, but a big one like that would certainly make a meal for a human being. Humans do sometimes eat tortoises in this area. It would also be a very good meal for something like a ground hornbill. Now, they are the major predators, I think, of those, certainly a tortoise that size. They're the only bird that has a beak. I mean, they've got a beak like a chisel, and they're the only bird that's got the sort of strength and a beakiness to get into the carapace of a tortoise. So they'll bash it on the top, and you can hear them. It sounds like a chisel hitting stone, and they crack it open, and then they eat the tortoise out. Otherwise, once a tortoise gets to that size, there are very few things that will be able to crush it. A hyena would obviously be able to break the shell, but they're quite difficult. Once it gets that big, it's quite difficult for any predator to actually get its mouth around the tortoise to crush the shell. So, I personally haven't eaten one myself, but I know that some people do consider them something of a delicacy. I think anything out here, you know, that doesn't eat a huge amount of meat is probably pretty delicious to eat. and I think you'll find, and this is without being flippant at all, Rene, you'll probably find that a tortoise tastes just like what, Brian? Chicken. I think so, yeah. Well, all reptiles apparently taste like chicken. Now, I think I've got this question correct from Terry in Secunda. Terry, Secunda is vastly different from where we live here. And you'd like to know how and where does the shell connect to the body? And the answer is pretty much all over. It's not like, say, a hermit crab, for example, that goes into the shell and isn't really connected. It's connected all the way around the front and back. And I mean, it's almost like, what you should think of it as is almost like skin, where the skin kind of fuses into the shell. I mean, it grows with the tortoise, so it's fused pretty much all over the tortoise's body. Not a huge amount going on here at Arathusa. Oh, here's a gardenia tree. While we look at this tree, which to you will probably not look like much at this stage, I have waffled on about it a few times, and it's called a gardenia, or Transvaal gardenia, or Transvaal or Gardenia volkensii, and it's got the most beautiful smelling flower, which I hope fervently has not emerged yet. I don't see any evidence of them. But they really are stunningly smelling flowers, and this one's obviously just come into leaf. Beautiful. The other thing that, of course, that we like to look at is Tingana, and I have just heard that he is on Hoffman's, which is the property to the east of where I'm sitting now and south of Vuyatela or Djuma, where we spend most of our time, and he's eating an impala there. Unfortunately, we can't go there, but he is fine, well, in good fettle, and clearly hunting very effectively still. For the meantime, leaving the aardvark population of this area alone. And for those of you who are perhaps new, he has a bit of a specialization. He's caught many aardvark. I have yet to see an aardvark in this area, so he's obviously very patient, and apparently you'll find that burrows sit on the termite mound until they're forced to come out, and then chaps them. Right, we are now heading to the east. We will eventually fetch up on the Arathusa airstrip, Arathusa International Airport. There's a man simply walking in the bush. It's quite odd. He's working on the airstrip, obviously. Oh, well, that's not something you see every day. That's not something you want to see every day, of course. A large JCB caterpillar. Ah, yeah! It's a bit industrial around these parts. Here is the Arathusa International Airstrip, which I think is now about 2 months behind schedule, if I'm not mistaken. It's fairly typical for this area. And I mean, quite apart from it being an open area, it's always a good place to come and look for animals. Because it's an open area, animals will often use it as a place to come, the same reason that we will, for a vantage point. The other thing that often comes out on the airstrips like this are wild dogs, because they clearly need to see to be able to hunt. And as the bush gets thicker and thicker, as it will do as the summer progresses, so will the things like wild dogs need more and more time in open areas like this. Is that a warthog or a bush? I don't think it's either. It might just be a stone or a stump. stump, everyone. Never mind. There is a zebra. Wonderful update there from Susan in the Netherlands. Thank you, Susan. That the word squirrel comes from the Anglo-French word shadow tail, something like that. Radio's a little bit off today, but that's wonderful to know. Thank you for that. And of course, the ground squirrel, which lives in the Kalahari, does precisely that. Sits on the ground and uses its tail as a parasol. It's highly important method of thermoregulation for the little squirrels, because they will overheat very fast in the sun. Here are some plains zebra. Let's stop here and have a look. And a question from Aaron, a new viewer. Whereabouts would the zebras be located, Aaron? Right there, really. They are now on the Arathusa airstrip. Difficult to predict where they'll be. They're of course totally non-territorial. They will have a home range, but they don't mark territories like many animals do out here, and so they don't have defined areas where they are normally to be found. But that said, they do have a relatively predictable lifestyle where they must drink, and so you will find them often heading towards water in the heat of the day and sometimes in the evening like this, and they will always enjoy open areas. There are a whole lot more coming towards us. Brian, you see those ones across the way there. And Aaron, sorry, I'm adopting an athletic position so that my head doesn't get in the way. Zebras, of course, in this area occur in what we call a kinship group. So there'll be a stallion and his harem of mares and their offspring, and that will form a sort of kinship group. And those huge herds that you see in East Africa are made up of a number of different kinship groups, very similar. And then of course you also find young stallions on their own, together or in little bachelor groups, and when they get big enough, what they do is they then challenge an adult stallion for his daughters. So they'll have a fight with him, and if they beat him up sufficiently they can take away his daughters. But apparently his wives, his original harem, will normally stay relatively loyal to him as long as he's not in particularly poor shape. So that's quite nice. It's not often that fidelity occurs out here in the mammal kingdom, but there is a bit of fidelity and honor amongst the zebras. It's a lovely shot, especially with the river in between them, don't you think, Brian?
The river makes it.
The river definitely makes it. We should make some river sounds. Whoosh, whoosh, splash, splash. It's actually a really nice shot of the zebras. I hope they come to meet this other one. I'm just going to try and see the original one, whether he's a stallion or a mare. Yeah, that looks to be a stallion. I'm afraid with a zebra the only obvious thing to look for is the obvious. You can also tell from the thickness of the neck. If you see them standing next to each other, the stallion's normally a little bit bigger with a thicker neck, more muscular neck. They're very reticent to come onto the tarmac. This is interesting. They're going to have a little meeting. This is lovely. Normally they just disappear into the bush and we say, oh, there's some zebra. Now we have them on the stage in front of us. Now you can see that's a mare, I think, coming up in your left of frame now towards the stallion, and now she's just more slightly built than he is, more elegant. There we go, saying hi. A bit like horses, they'll blow into each other's noses. That's how you say hello. Don't try it too the next time you see a horse. You can end up with a face full of teeth. I've almost done that a few times myself. Now that one behind is also another mare. So that's probably this stallion's little harem. No, is it? I can't tell. It's a little bit difficult to tell from this distance. Another stallion at the way back there. That one there moving is definitely also a stallion. So a bit of a confusing group, this. One of them could be the original stallion's sons, I suppose. In fact, that one that's just arrived, he's bigger than the rest, you know. I think that he must be the harem leader. And if there are other males here, they're probably his sons. Although, and I'm going to have to change my... There are at least 3 stallions there. Now that I can see them swishing their tails to and fro, it might be entirely a bachelor group. I think it is. Oh well. I've ended up with enough egg on my face today, I think. I'm just going to be quiet. Right, so bachelor group. Not in fact any mares there at all. No foals, no sons. Deeply embarrassing. Actually, a really lovely little interaction, this. It's really not common that we get to spend this amount of time with them before they sort of disappear off. That lovely sound behind us that you can hear are some red-billed buffalo weavers, and they're building a nest in a tree. Look at that, isn't that lovely? And they're watching us almost as intently as we're watching them. Like they've just noticed us. Don't see anything behind us. There's some other zebra behind us. Maybe that's what they're looking at. We're probably paying ourselves a bit of a compliment. Brian, you're not hearing anything on the radio, are you? Oh my. If you are trying to send through a question, I think we have probably lost communications with the final control for some reason. I will get to your question. I'm assuming we're still live, of course. But at this stage, the final control may have been obliterated by a comet. I wouldn't know any different. Gee, that's a pretty picture. Right, shall we move on, Brian? There's definitely nothing coming out of your ears, eh? No? Okay, good. Right. I must just... Oh, there we go. We're okay, we're live. I must just tell you, everybody, that Brian has got attached to his head a GoPro. And he is shooting what is known as a vlog, or a video blog, of a day in the life. correct, Ryan? I look forward to its result. I fear that you will see some behaviour that you didn't think possible from the otherwise upstanding people that present to you on a daily basis. We'll just have one more stop here with the zebras. We are now receiving communications. And then another one from Aaron, one of our new viewers. Thanks, Aaron, for your time and again your questions. You want to know what zebras eat. Zebras are almost exclusively grazers, Aaron. They eat just about only grass. They will eat some browse in desperate times, but they will eat grass, short grass, by choice, just like a horse, really. And what's also interesting to me is that a horse, of course, these days are generally fed various kinds of grains, and a bit like many of the herbivores that we think of as being predominantly grain eaters, they're not, they're not evolved to eat huge amounts of rich seed, and so they eat lots more roughage than they ever do the kind of concentrated grain feeds. It's exactly the same as cattle, which we tend to feed a lot of corn, which they're not actually naturally evolved to eat at all. Quite interesting. And then again, you can very clearly see that that kind of patterning next to them, or not next to them, in amongst them, makes them quite difficult to pick out when they're moving. And I'm convinced that their colouring, while it makes them pretty obvious to the human eye, I think that's why they're coloured like that. If you watch them moving now, if you were seeing in black and white at dusk, I think you'd find that they were quite difficult to see. So I've had a good look at them all now, and the most definitely no mares. They're all stallions of varying ages. They're not all the same age, but they're obviously none of them yet able to take their own harem. And also the variation in their stripes is very obvious. And as I've said a few times before, while looking at zebras, to me it would be far more astonishing were their stripes to be the same. And often people say, well, of course zebras' stripes are all completely different from each other's. Yes, well, of course they are. None of us look the same. All right, we're going to leave these zebras. We're going to head across to Scott, I think, and we'll see what he's doing, and I'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone, and happy to hear that you've been enjoying some great sightings with James. Haven't been too many leopard tortoise sightings yet this summer, and good to hear that you got to see one doing a high-speed sprint across a little clearing, I'm told. Now we are in search of a real leopard, the cat version, not the tortoise version thereof. And we're following up reports from later on this morning where one of the Buffalo's Hook landowners, the property to the north of Djuma, followed Karula from our northern boundary south into this area. Basically, she came between the road that we're traveling on now, which is called Sandy Patch, and the next road, which is called Aubrey's Road. So she's somewhere to our right, or at least that's where she was last left. And Brent and Steph and Jandre, the walking team, have deployed themselves in this area. And Brent, just before we went live, actually did try and give me an update, but I didn't get it from him. So I'm going to try and get a hold of him again and see if he's got any good news for us. But it's not an easy business finding leopard in this terrain. It's very, very thick, and the camouflage is incredible. So even if we drove past her just a few meters, we could miss her. So please do help. I've asked VM to scan in the trees, especially the marula trees with the big horizontal branches, which are comfortable for leopards to sleep in. Especially on a hot day like this, there's a lot more of a breeze higher up off the ground, whereas lower down there's a kind of thick blanket of vegetation that prevents the wind from cooling animals down. And I'm going to be trying to keep my eyes peeled on the roads for any sign of her tracks, which we've been doing for quite some time now. We started off doing a wide search in the general area of roads surrounding the area that she moved in, and we've been narrowing down the search, moving closer and closer into where she was last seen. All the time though we've been creeping along trying to make sure we don't miss any of her little footprints, which are probably only about that big, on the sand. The Game Drive channel is incredibly busy though, because everyone's having a wonderful time to our north. They've got a wild dog sighting, a leopard sighting, but we can't go there sadly. So the radio is very, very busy, and that's why I cannot get a word into Brent. So that is the reason why I'm not more urgently trying to get a hold of him. There's a lot of chatter on the radio, which is blasting into my right ear as I'm talking to you, which can be somewhat distracting. It's cooling down to a wonderful temperature now, but interestingly enough, even about half an hour or 45 minutes ago in Mvula, a big male leopard who we used to see a lot here on Djuma, but he's now moved further east, he was found on the move. Now another male leopard was found on Buffelshoek. I'm not sure which one it was, I didn't hear too clearly, but he's also on the move, so there's nothing to say that Karula wouldn't be moving now. And interestingly, unlike lion, who especially in the summer months will often be in the exact same position in the afternoon as to where you left them at the end of a morning drive. Leopards, however, you can leave on the morning somewhere, and it's highly unlikely that you'll find them in that same place in the afternoon. Of course, that's not including if they've got a kill. Okay, I'm going to try and squeeze in a word to Brent here. Brent for Scott. Sorry Brent, I was battling to get a chance to chat with you. Any updates? That was great. Brent was busy giving me an update, and he said he's found where tracks came into the property from our northern boundary, and he says we're driving along Aubrey's, we haven't found any tracks yet, and he goes, oh no, wait, so he's obviously just found some tracks. He does. Oh no, it's a false alarm. They obviously saw a similar looking track and got excited. Maybe a honey badger or hyena. But we'll find out shortly. The fact that he's gone quiet though means I think it was a false alarm. But there's a chance they found her tracks on Aubrey's. I'm just waiting to get confirmation from him. Oh, something that I forgot to mention this afternoon, and thanks to James Bear's question, I'm going to let everyone know. Okay, copy, thanks Brent. Sorry about that, everyone. And James Bear has asked whether Peter Pretorius and Hayden Turner, two of the other Safari Live Wild Earth presenters, have arrived in camp yet, and I don't think they have. They left Joburg early this morning, but it's quite a long drive. It takes about 6 to 7 hours to get here from there. And I'm not sure, they've probably stopped to pick up odds and ends along the way. But they should be here by sometime this evening, and there's a strong chance somebody will, well, Peter will probably be out in the morning with James. The two of them are going to be operating out of the vehicles for the coming drives. They'll probably be the two that you see most in the vehicles, and Brent and myself will be doing the walking safaris. And not too sure exactly what Hayden and Jamie are going to be up to, but maybe that's a bit of a surprise and you'll get to see in. But it's going to be great to have back, as well as Graham Wallington, who is the head honcho and his live safaris. So without him, none of us would be here. And we're going through a bit of a bad signal area, but we should get better as we get higher.
We are live. Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy. I believe I called Wendy Jigger the whole morning, which Brian quietly took me aside and pointed out later on after the drive. Sorry about that. We are now driving up what is known as the Triple M break. Not entirely sure why it's called that, but basically we're coming out of Arathusa and going back into Djuma. The signal is a little bit more reliable, and well, there are a few viewpoints of what promises to be a pretty spectacular sunset through a bank of clouds. Now, at this time of the year, this is what I'm used to weather-wise, where when the clouds build over the mountains just about on an afternoonly basis every day, and they promise much. Rather like the world over, they deliver very little until later on. So I think that's what we're seeing here. I may be wrong, and we may get a smattering of rain later on, but I don't think so. Excuse me, weaving across the road like this, I'm trying desperately to avoid the bumps, which are threatening to shake Brian's teeth clean out of his skull. There we go, that's a bit smoother. I'm just constantly amazed again and again at how amazingly green it has become here over the last 2 weeks. And while it's very pretty to look at, it's not always the easiest to spot animals in it. Not easy to hide away from them. Right, we are now returning onto Djuma, the next corner. We will go and see what wonders there are there. I think our first port of call will be Treehouse Dam. And dam, of course, is a very strong word for what it is now. It is now a pool of evil-smelling porridge. I'm also on the lookout for some flowers, which I really do quite like, but I'm not very good at yet. And I believe just before Scott disappeared, Scott was telling you that Hayden and Peter are going to be in camp today. We're all rather excited about that, I must say. Hayden and Peter, for those of you new viewers, are highly professional, highly skilled presenters of many years of experience. Hayden worked for a long time for National Geographic. He's freelance at the moment, but still does National Geographic stuff for them. And Peter, of course, was one of the pioneering starters or founders of Wild Earth and the Wild Earth product.
Ikaw minsan kwala. Ay kumangin chumo namunsa. Kumain.
Probably about a thing.
Okay, in pasu sungale. Okay, swati kem savin. Okay, all right. Swain. Okay, all right. Okay, yeah, I'll go na gal si Bejana. He come here.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, can see you later. Right, so that was Andries from Chitwa Chitwa, and we were speaking Shangaan, and he said that most of us said, well, have you seen anything? And he said, well, we've seen quite a lot of animals down there. We're of course not allowed to go, right? Not to say that there won't be any that side where we're going now. There's some beautiful kudu up ahead we'll go and have a look at quickly. Anyway, as I was saying, Peter and Hayden are coming in. There is a National Geographic TV special coming up on the 13th and 14th, and they're coming in to help out with their professional ways and high and great experience. So I'm looking forward to learning from them greatly. I did meet Hayden in London when I was there, and we had a wonderful time. Beautiful kudu bulls hiding in the thick bush. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. 4 adult bulls. And up me window. Oh, there are a whole lot more here. That might give you a better view there. So there's 6 of them there. 6 magnificent kudu bulls, all with each other. So there's obviously not a huge amount of breeding going on at the moment. And most of the breeding for these guys would have taken place to time the births for similar time to the impala, not quite as synchronized, but around about late November, early December, and their gestation period I think is just about 9 months. So most of the breeding would have taken place around March. That lovely bird that you can hear. Called a Steerling's wren warbler. Such a lovely call. And every day there are going to be more calls that we haven't heard during the winter. That's not necessarily because the birds have migrated anywhere, but because it's now breeding season for the birds, and so they'll be trying to attract the attentions of the ladies. There's another one. 7 kudu bulls. That's number 6 that's in your picture now, and number 7 is just popping out of the bush to the left of your frame. He stopped for a brief bite to eat. Now these guys are all adults. They're not youngsters at all. They get roughly half a twist in the horn per year. So that one there is clearly at least 4, I would say, and that's definitely adult for a kudu bull. And they'll hang around together like this purely for safety. And I'm sure to shoot the breeze, but it's mainly for safety. And there have been often, you can see the white tip on the edges of the horns. There are many theories for why that white tip is there. None of them make any sense to me. I actually think it's just a growth point that happens to be white. But so it's a bit like new or unvarnished wood, if you like, or unstained wood, or even a bit, I mean, maybe this isn't a great analogy, but a bit like a thatch roof, which when you lay it is perfectly yellow and clean, and eventually with age it turns brown. I suspect that's why their horns are that sort of that colour at the top. Beautiful. Alright, lovely kudus. We're going to head off towards Treehouse Dam. If there's anything there, I'll be sure to tell you about it. While we're going there, we're going to head across to Scott, who I believe is in a more reliable signal area, and I'll see you just a little bit later.
Welcome back, everybody. Sadly, we have no positive updates. The only update we have is bad news, and that is the hyena den site that we've just left was inactive. Nobody home. But the good news is that we are still in the area where Karula could pop up. She could have been lying on this very termite mound, but she's not. Good place to look though. Very good place to look on these termite mounds. Not too many marula trees in this area. But again, the marula trees with the large horizontal branches are a good place to keep your eyes peeled for a tail dangling down or four limbs hanging in the air. Basically vertical growths pointing downwards are very abnormal in a tree. They usually grow upwards, so that's what you're looking for. Not necessarily the coloration or the spots and pattern of a leopard, but more the odd shapes are better to look for. I can see the footprints of one times Brent Leo Smith, one times Jean-Andre Gerding, and one times Stefan Winterboer, who have also patrolled this road ahead of us. The tracks aren't very easy to see though, so I didn't think it would be a good option to stop and show you their footprints. But they have been waltzing down this road in search of any signs of her tracking. Her general movement, kind of from the reports we got on the tracks that they've seen, have been a south and easterly direction, which should eventually take her to the Djuma camps, Vuyatela and Galago. So even if we don't find her on drive this afternoon, it's going to be worth keeping an eye out the Djuma waterhole this evening. She may pop up there. Or maybe the guests staying at the Galago camp will get lucky and get to see her drinking at the little waterhole in front of their lodge area. Karula, where are you hiding? Well, Brandy, I am also desperately keen to try and see a spotted cat, preferably a leopard. The chances of seeing a cheetah are there, but very slim. And this is probably the last drive I'm going to be doing until the 2nd of November. I was just discussing with VM. I go on leave on the 15th of this month, and this will be the last drive that I in all likelihood will be doing. And when you're not driving around, you don't get to see the cat, so this is my last chance to hopefully get a leopard sighting in. As I said earlier, Peter and James are going to be conducting the majority of the drives over the coming week, possibly with Hayden and Jamie doing one or two, and Brent and I are going to be focusing on the bushwalks. But on the walks, if you do see the cats, it'll usually be a fleeting glimpse, and we'll call in the vehicles with all of you guys to come and have a closer look. And John is also asking if there are any updates on the Inkahuma Pride, which have reunited. The remaining 6 members of that pride are all together on Nkoro, which is to our south and east, but we've got no radio comms with Nkoro, John. So I've got no idea if they've moved at all this afternoon. I'm guessing though they wouldn't. Like I was saying earlier, at this time of the year, it's highly unlikely to see lions on the move during the daylight hours. Most of it will happen after dark. Of course there will be exceptions, but if I had to put money on it, I would say they're all still fast asleep.